I also find it bizarre to think of capitalism and socialism in terms of governments and markets. And perhaps that's a key point to drive home. Slavery had markets. There's nothing unique about capitalism and markets. You remember American slavery? They bought and sold slaves. That's a market. They bought and sold cotton. That's a market. They bought and sold fill in the blank. So markets existed in slave society. Ditto in much of feudalism. Not always. Some parts of feudalism solved the coordination problem in different ways, not market ways. But markets coexist. So capitalism is not the system of markets because those long predate capitalism. Well, then what is capitalism? I would argue Marx, whose contribution strikes me as pivotal here, had a pretty clear definition that there are different ways human beings have organized the production of goods and services. That's different from how they circulate. Markets are about exchange and circulation, but Marx's focus was on production. So here's three basic ways in modern history. Slaves is one way. You have a master and a slave. Masters is a small group, slaves is a large group. Slaves do most of the work. Masters tell them what to do. Masters become rich and powerful. Slaves yearn for a better system. Then we have feudalism. How interesting. Different. No slavery. Nobody can own anybody. But you have a small group of people again, lords, and a large group of people who do all the work, serfs. And one interesting thing is that the serfs yearn to do better. Now we come to capitalism. It's different. That's what's interesting. How is it different? Nobody is anybody's slave, and nobody has a personal obligation to another person the way a serf and a lord did. Instead, a contract links the two. There's an employer, a small group of people who tend to become rich and powerful, and a mass of employees, a large group of people who don't. Notice the parallel in these three systems. You might have thought, if you were all excited about capitalism, you might have believed the theorists of the capitalist revolution that they were breaking from all of the earlier systems. They were breaking from slavery. They were breaking from feudalism. And in important ways, they did. But there were equally important ways in which they didn't. And one of them was this division of people in production into a small group of people with all the power and wealth, telling all the others, the vast majority, what to do. Modern capitalist corporation is the most undemocratic institution I can imagine. You do what you are told, the majority. And if you don't, you lose your job and you lose your income. That's called compulsion. And that's the arrangement. And if you don't like what your employer tells you to do, well, you're free in capitalism and you can go and work for another one. Whoa, what an interesting system. Where does all this conversation about freedom come from, or democracy for that matter? You know, if you really believed in democracy, the workplace is the first place you would have installed it. You know why? Because that's where adults spend most of their lives, working. 5 out of 7 days, the best hours of the day, they're on the job. Make the job democratic if you are believing in democracy. But you don't. You allow the owner or the shareholders or the major shareholders or the board of directors or some mix and match of all of them, a tiny minority, to dictate to everybody else. No one person, one vote, no democratic decision what to produce and what not.